In just a few weeks, dozens of Russian vehicles and supply runs near Pokrovsk have been hit or disrupted, according to open battlefield footage that keeps piling up online. What stands out is not a single strike, but the volume and the rhythm. With repeated losses, broken movements, and stalled resupply becoming a daily pattern around this Donetsk hotspot. Pokrovsk is now showing a hard truth about modern war. Large armored columns are no longer leading the way. Russian units are moving in small groups, on foot, on motorcycles, and with light transport, trying to reduce their footprint under constant pressure from Ukrainian FPV and FP2 drones circling above. The images tell a clear story. Individual soldiers are spotted while moving alone. Small supply vehicles are tracked from the air. Basements, ruined houses, and tree lines fail to provide safety once a drone locks on. This is not only about destroying hardware. Ukraine is using strike drones to hunt single targets, break supply links, and exhaust units before they can even reach the front. Each hit slows movement. Each delay increases exposure. Each loss compounds the next one. What is unfolding around Pokrovsk is a shift in the rules of ground combat. The sky at low altitude now decides who moves, who hides, and who gets resupplied. The key question is no longer how fast troops advance, but whether survival is even possible under a battlefield that never looks away. FPV and FP2 drones now dominate the low airspace over Pokrovsk, and this control has become the main factor shaping every movement on the ground. Along the main access routes into the city, Ukrainian UAV units keep a constant presence in the sky, with drones rotating in sequence rather than appearing in short bursts. FPV and FP2 platforms move in overlapping patterns, watching roads, tree lines, damaged buildings, and open ground where Russian units must pass. This creates a situation where airspace at low altitude is rarely empty, and any pause in coverage is quickly filled by another drone taking position. This pressure changes how Russian infantry approaches the battlefield in real time. Small groups attempt to advance in short dashes, waiting for moments they believe the sky is clear, but those moments often do not exist. Drones are already overhead or arrive within seconds, forcing troops to stop, scatter, or turn back. Movement that once relied on speed now depends on timing and luck, because detection no longer comes from distant sensors, but from cameras flying just above head height. The effect is strongest near the approaches to Pokrovsk, where FP2 drones are used to monitor wider areas, while FPV drones stay closer to the ground. FP2 platforms identify activity and relay positions. Then FPV drones are directed toward specific targets. This pairing allows Ukrainian units to shift quickly from observation to attack without changing systems or waiting for separate assets. Once a target is spotted, the window for escape becomes extremely short. Drone coverage also compresses the battlefield. Russian units find that even short distances between buildings or tree lines feel exposed. A road crossing that takes seconds can trigger an attack if a drone has line of sight. Sheltered routes shrink as FPV drones fly low along walls, over debris, and through gaps that were once considered safe. The result is a landscape where cover exists in theory, but fails in practice once drones close in. This is not a series of isolated strikes. It is a sustained method designed to deny freedom of movement. Ukrainian drone operators focus on maintaining presence rather than seeking dramatic single hits. The goal is to keep pressure constant so that Russian units remain pinned, delayed, or forced into poor decisions. Even when no strike occurs, the sound of drones overhead slows advances and breaks coordination among small groups. As this pattern continues, Russian forces are pushed into fragmented actions. Units hesitate to regroup because gathering increases visibility. Command and control becomes harder as leaders avoid exposing themselves to guide movements. The battlefield rhythm shifts toward short, disconnected attempts rather than steady progress. Each attempt is shaped by what drones see and how quickly operators respond. The continuous drone presence also affects how time is used. Soldiers spend more minutes waiting, listening, and scanning the sky than advancing. Fatigue builds as pauses grow longer and tension never fully drops. This weakens momentum and makes coordination across multiple elements more fragile with each hour that passes. FPV and FP2 drones together turn the low sky into a barrier that must be crossed repeatedly, not once. This approach explains why the situation feels locked in place. It is not that Russian units lack the will to move forward. It is that the airspace they must cross is actively hostile at every moment. As long as this drone coverage remains intact, even limited actions carry high risk, and the battle around Pokrovsk continues to be shaped from above rather than from the ground. Russian forces around Pokrovsk are now moving in scattered formations, and this dispersion has become a clear sign of how intense the pressure is on the battlefield. Recent fighting shows Russian units advancing with small mechanized elements instead of large armored columns, including light vehicles and motorcycles used to move troops forward in short bursts. This choice is not driven by speed or surprise, but by fear of exposure, because concentrated formations are easier to detect and strike from the air. As these dispersed groups enter contested zones, coordination becomes fragile almost immediately. Soldiers move in loose spacing to avoid presenting a clear target. Yet this spacing makes mutual support harder to maintain. The scattered pattern also creates a new problem during movement. Each soldier or rider becomes a separate signature that drones can track. Once detected, there is little protection from follow-on strikes. Signals passed from observation drones guide strike drones toward isolated targets, and there is rarely a chance to regroup without increasing visibility. What begins as an attempt to reduce risk ends up spreading danger across many small points. Motorcycles play a growing role in this approach, yet they bring their own limits. Riders can move quickly through narrow paths, but they lack protection and cannot carry heavy equipment. When forced to slow down or stop, riders become exposed in open terrain with little cover. If one element is hit, nearby units cannot easily assist without revealing themselves. This breaks the flow of movement and forces pauses that drain momentum. Command control suffers under these conditions. Leaders struggle to keep track of scattered elements as radio use is limited to avoid detection. Orders arrive late or not at all, and decisions are pushed down to individuals under stress. This weakens timing across the unit, making it harder to synchronize advances or withdrawals. Small delays add up, and windows of opportunity close before they can be used. Without mass or timing, pressure on Ukrainian defenses stays uneven. Each failed attempt leaves behind fatigue and losses that reduce the strength of the next move. This pattern reflects more than a tactical choice. It shows how constant surveillance reshapes behavior. Russian units are adjusting because traditional methods invite rapid detection and attack. Dispersion becomes a necessity, not a preference. Yet this necessity comes with costs that are hard to avoid, especially when facing opponents who control the airspace close to the ground. Over time, dispersed movement changes the tempo of battle. Progress slows as units wait for moments they believe are safer, though those moments are rare. The battlefield becomes a series of cautious steps instead of sustained pressure. Every advance feels temporary, and holding ground becomes harder when support elements are far apart. This adjustment reveals how powerful aerial pressure has become, because it shapes not only where units move, but how they think and act at every stage of the fight. Ukrainian drones around Pokrovsk are now operating as multi-role systems, and this shift has turned individual movement and small-scale supply into some of the most dangerous actions on the battlefield. Recent frontline footage shows that Ukrainian drone units are not limiting strikes to vehicles or fixed positions. Instead, drones are actively hunting individual soldiers who move on foot or by motorcycle. Once a person is detected, tracking continues across open ground, broken streets, and damaged neighborhoods. This creates a situation where a single figure can be followed for minutes, not seconds, until an attack window appears. The danger increases when targets attempt to hide. Trees, bushes, and ruined structures no longer offer reliable cover when drones approach from above and from the sides. FPV drones fly low and adjust quickly, slipping through gaps and following movement patterns that are visible even when bodies are partially concealed. This approach changes how soldiers think about every decision. A short sprint between two walls becomes a risk assessment. A pause to rest becomes a potential exposure. Even slowing down to adjust equipment can attract attention if a drone is already nearby. Drone teams also link this tracking role with attacks on supply activity. Small vehicles carrying ammunition or basic provisions are watched closely, especially when they move alone. Once identified, these targets face the same pursuit pattern as individual soldiers. This method does not rely on destroying large convoys. It focuses on denying steady flow and forcing frontline units to operate with shrinking resources. The impact spreads quickly. When supplies fail to arrive, units hesitate to move forward. Weapons are used more carefully, and rest becomes harder to schedule. This pressure compounds the risk already created by drone presence, because tired soldiers with limited equipment make slower choices. Slower choices increase exposure, which leads to more drone engagement. What stands out in Pokrovsk is how little separation exists between observation and strike. Drones do not need to wait for permission or support from distant systems. Once a target is seen, action follows almost immediately. This short chain compresses reaction time to the point where escape depends more on chance than skill. The sky does not just see, it decides. The psychological effect is just as important as physical damage. Knowing that drones can pursue individuals changes morale and behavior. Movement becomes hesitant. Units spread out further, which weakens coordination and makes mutual support rare. This isolation plays directly into the drone hunting model. This method also reduces the need for large engagements. Instead of forcing breakthroughs, Ukrainian drone units shape the fight by limiting options. They restrict where and when movement can occur. They influence choices before shots are fired. The battlefield becomes quieter in some moments, but far more dangerous overall. Drones stay close, adapt to terrain, and respond to small signals. Each step taken on the ground must account for the sky above, because that sky is active, alert, and hostile. This is why every movement now carries weight. A stop near cover can draw attention. A supply run can collapse before reaching its goal. Traditional camouflage and shelter around Pokrovsk are no longer providing real protection. And this loss has become one of the most dangerous shifts on the modern battlefield. In earlier phases of ground combat, hiding relied on breaking line of sight. Dense trees, bushes, ruined walls, and deep basements were meant to slow detection and buy time. Under constant UAV presence, that logic collapses. Drones observe from above, move at low altitude, and adjust angles in seconds. Cover that blocks vision from the ground does not block vision from the sky. And this difference now decides survival. Frontline footage shows how quickly classic hiding places fail. A soldier slipping behind a tree may disappear from ground view, yet the shape and movement remain clear from overhead. Bushes that once blended into terrain now stand out when disturbed. Collapsed buildings provide shade and rubble, but drones scan entrances, broken roofs, and interior gaps that reveal activity. What looks concealed from one angle is exposed from another. Forests, once trusted for protection, have also lost much of their value. Leaves and branches break outlines from the side, but drones look down through openings in the canopy. Movement beneath trees creates patterns that stand out against still backgrounds, When a drone circles slowly, it can confirm presence without rushing. This patient observation turns natural cover into a temporary delay rather than real safety. Basements and underground spaces carry similar risks. Entering a cellar may block direct view, yet access points remain visible. Drones watch doors, stairwells, and broken walls, waiting for entry or exit. Once a pattern is established, strike drones can be guided toward the opening. What was once the deepest refuge now becomes a trap if timing fails. This erosion of shelter changes behavior on the ground. Soldiers hesitate longer before choosing where to hide, knowing that each option carries flaws. Decision time increases while danger remains constant. The pause itself becomes risky because drones reward stillness with focus. A wrong choice is punished quickly, and that pressure forces rushed moves that expose new angles. The psychological impact builds with each encounter. Being watched without knowing from where creates stress that does not fade between contacts. The sound of a drone overhead is enough to break concentration. As confidence drops, coordination suffers. Groups split farther apart to reduce visibility, yet this separation weakens mutual support. Communication shortens to brief signals, which limits planning. Leaders struggle to guide movement when every pause risks exposure. Small mistakes multiply because there is little room to recover once detected. Drone operators do not need to rush attacks. They wait for confirmation and commit only when success is likely. That patience contrasts sharply with ground forces who must move, rest, and resupply. The imbalance places constant strain on those below, who face a threat that does not tire. Each wall, tree, or ruin becomes a question rather than an answer. Soldiers must weigh options knowing none are reliable, and that calculation repeats with every step. UAV activity around Pokrovsk is now reshaping the fight by choking supply lines, and this pressure is proving more decisive than the destruction of frontline units. Modern drones operating in this sector are not limited to attacking trenches or vehicles at the front. They spend long hours watching roads, dirt tracks, and improvised paths used by small vehicles that carry ammunition, food, water, and basic gear. These routes are not hidden corridors anymore. They are exposed spaces where movement itself becomes a signal. Once a pattern appears, attention does not fade. A single pickup or light truck traveling alone can be observed across multiple segments of its journey. Even after it leaves one area, drone operators often maintain focus on likely follow-on routes. This persistent observation turns routine resupply from a background task into a dangerous gamble that must be weighed every time a vehicle starts its engine. The disruption begins before any strike is launched. Drivers slow their pace, stop more often, and change direction repeatedly to avoid being tracked. Each adjustment adds minutes to the journey and increases the chance of exposure. When movement pauses, drones do not rush. They circle and hold position, keeping pressure constant. If a vehicle starts again, it does so under watch that can guide action at any moment. Even when no attack follows, the delay alone weakens support to forward units. Supplies arrive late or not at all, and that gap is felt almost immediately. Small-scale strikes magnify this effect. Rather than chasing large convoys, drone operators aim at weak points along the chain. A single vehicle hit at the wrong place can block a narrow road or force others to turn back. This breaks timing and causes shortages to appear sooner than expected, often before units have time to adjust. Frontline troops feel the impact first. Planned deliveries fail to arrive, and reserves shrink faster than anticipated. Ammunition is conserved, which limits response options under pressure. Equipment repairs are delayed because spare parts do not reach the line. What should be a temporary issue becomes a constant constraint that shapes every decision. Medical evacuation also suffers. Routes under watch create hesitation, and vehicles wait longer before moving wounded personnel. Each delay adds stress and increases risk. As these effects accumulate, fatigue spreads beyond the immediate front. Soldiers wait longer between resupply attempts and carry heavier loads when movement is possible. Drone pressure also forces changes in organization. Supply runs are broken into smaller loads to reduce potential loss, but this raises the number of trips required. Schedules slip as routes change, and coordination becomes harder to maintain. Commanders struggle to predict when support will arrive, which complicates planning for both attack and defense. This pattern shows why logistics has become a primary target. Control of movement behind the line shapes the fight ahead of it. By stressing supply rather than massed forces, drones influence outcomes without large battles. The front grows brittle as units operate with little margin for error, and even short disruptions can shift the balance at critical moments. The strategic difference is clear. Drones are not just tools that remove targets from the field. They slow the rhythm of war until the other side struggles to keep pace. This pressure does not rely on constant strikes. It relies on presence. Recovery becomes difficult under these conditions. Even when losses are light, limited movement prevents quick repair or reinforcement. Damage that would normally be manageable becomes serious when support cannot arrive. What is unfolding near Pokrovsk highlights a shift in how battles are decided. Victory is no longer measured only by vehicles destroyed or ground taken. It is shaped by who controls the flow that keeps forces alive and effective. In this environment, UAVs act as gatekeepers of movement. By choking supply lines with constant pressure, they constrain the ground fight in ways that are hard to break, turning every path into part of the battlefield. Pokrovsk is no longer just another contested city on the Donetsk front. It is becoming a warning signal for how modern ground wars may now be decided. What is unfolding there shows a battlefield where control of low airspace sets the rules. Ukrainian drones hover constantly above the city, track individual soldiers, follow motorcycles, disrupt small supply runs, and erase the value of traditional cover. Movement has turned into a risk. Hiding has lost meaning. Logistics, once a background task, has become a frontline vulnerability. This is not about a single weapon or a temporary tactic. It is about a system where drones observe, pressure, and strike in cycles that never fully stop. Russian forces are being pushed to adapt in real time, breaking into smaller elements, changing routes, and slowing their tempo just to survive. At the same time, Ukrainian drone units are shaping the fight without needing large assaults or constant artillery fire. The bigger question now goes beyond Pokrovsk itself. Can Russia find a reliable way to break this kind of drone dominance across Donetsk? Or will this model spread to other sectors of the war? And if drones continue to control movement, supply, and shelter, how will armies rethink infantry tactics, logistics, and command under constant watch from the sky? The answers are still unclear, and that uncertainty is exactly what makes Pokrovsk so important to watch next. If this analysis helped clarify what is really happening on the ground, like the video, share it with others who follow modern warfare, and subscribe to Military Force for more clear reporting on battles, weapons, and the politics behind them.